When I was 18, I met a young man named Thalamus. He was handsome, rich, and funny. He spoke to me kindly, and I felt special. I thought maybe this was love. We went for walks, laughed, and talked for hours. He bought me flowers and promised me a bright future. I believed every word he said. But one day, he went away. He said he was going back to Paris and that he would return soon. I waited for weeks, then months, but he never came back. He left me with something he did not know about. A baby girl. When I looked at her for the first time, I cried. She was small, beautiful, and perfect. I named her Cosette. I did not have family or money, but I had my little girl. She became my whole world. I worked wherever I could, washing clothes, cleaning houses, doing small jobs. Every time I looked at Cosette, I smiled again. Even when I was tired, I said to myself, for her, I can do anything. But life became harder. People looked down on me because I had no husband. In those days, women like me were judged and treated badly. Some people refused to give me work. I tried to hide my pain, but my heart was heavy. I wanted Cosette to have a better life. A safe life, so I made a difficult choice. One morning, I left my small town with Cosette in my arms. I walked for many miles through rain and cold wind, searching for a place where someone could take care of her while I worked. I reached a village called Malfure, where a small inn was run by a man named Monsieur Thénardier and his wife, Madame Thénardier. They had 2 daughters, Epony and Alma, who looked healthy and happy. The inn was noisy and full of people, but I saw laughter there. Maybe I thought my little girl could be safe here. I asked Madame Thénardier, would you take care of my daughter? I must find work in another town. She looked at Cosette and smiled. A cold smile. She said, of course, poor dear. We will treat her like our own. She told me I could pay a little money every month for food and care. I believed her. I kissed Cosette and whispered, I'll come back soon, my little one. Be good. And remember, Mama loves you. Cosette held my dress and cried, Mama, don't go. But I had no choice. I walked away crying too. Every few steps, I turned around to see her face one more time. It was the hardest thing I ever did. I found work in a big town called Monter. I worked in a factory that made glass and jewelry. The owner was a kind man, Miss Medeline. He was rich but good to poor people, and he gave jobs to many women like me. I worked long hours, but I was happy because I could send money every month. For Cosette, I sent letters and asked, how is my little girl? Is she well? Does she smile? Madame Thénardier always wrote back, she is happy, but she needs more clothes, more medicine, more money. So I worked harder and sent more, but I did not know the truth. The Thénardiers were cruel. They made Cosette work all day, washing floors, fetching water, and cleaning tables. She had no toys, no new dress, no warm bed. The Thénardiers kept all the money I sent. They laughed at her and called her names. Their own daughters wore pretty dresses and played, while Cosette worked and cried. Quietly, still she never complained. She whispered, Mama will come back. Mama will take me home. Back in Montreuil, sir, people began to talk about me. They whispered things behind my back. They said I had a child with no father. Some women were cruel and did not want me near them. One day, a lady from the factory told my secret to the manager. The next morning, he called me into his office and said, you must leave. You can't work here anymore. I begged him, please, sir, I need this job. I have a child. But he didn't listen. He pushed a few coins into my hand and said, go. Now, that night I sat alone in my small room. I had no work, no food, no money, only pain. I thought of Cosette and her small hands. I prayed, God, please take care of my little girl. Let her be warm tonight. I walked through the streets looking for help, but no one cared. People looked away when they saw my torn dress. I sold my few belongings, my clothes, my hair, even my teeth, just to send more money to Monter. I didn't care about myself anymore. I only cared about Cosette. Every time I sent money, I whispered, "Sleep well, my angel. Mama loves you." Winter came. The nights were cold, and I was often sick. Sometimes I couldn't walk far, but I pushed myself. I dreamed of the day I would see Cosette again. Her face kept me alive. Before I continue rest of the story, please like, subscribe, share, and tell me where you are listening from. Your support means a lot to me. Now, let's continue. After I lost my job, the days became dark and long. I woke up each morning with no reason. Only hunger in my stomach and pain in my heart. My small room was cold, and the walls were thin. I could hear the rain outside, but I had no money for firewood. Sometimes I sat by the window and watched people passing on the street. They looked warm and happy, wearing good clothes and smiling. I thought about the time when I had a job, when people talked to me with respect. Now no one looked at me. When they did, it was with disgust, as if I was less than human. I still sent money to Ma for May whenever I could. I stopped eating so that I could send one more coin. I sold my hair when I could not find food. Then I sold my teeth when my landlord wanted rent. Every small thing I lost made me weaker, but each time I thought of my little Cosette, I said to myself, just one more day, one more try. The winter that year was cruel. My clothes were thin and the snow fell without mercy. One night I was so cold that I could not feel my fingers. I went to the market to beg for work, but the shopkeeper told me to leave. "Go away," he said. "I don't help women like you." I wanted to cry, but I kept walking. Later that night, a man followed me down the street. He said, "Come with me. I can give you money." I didn't understand at first. Then I saw the way he looked at me. My heart broke. I turned away and ran. But hunger and cold don't let you stay proud for long. A few weeks later, I stopped fighting. I let myself fall into the same darkness that had taken many poor women before me. I hated myself every time I looked in the mirror. My face was pale, my eyes tired. I barely recognized the girl who once dreamed of love and happiness. Sometimes people threw insults at me. Sometimes they laughed. I did not answer them. I only thought, I'm doing this for my daughter. That thought was the only light left in my life. One evening, there was a fight in the street. Some men were drunk and shouting. A policeman came running and started asking questions. When he saw me standing there, he thought I was part of the trouble. He grabbed my arm roughly and said, "You again, Nancy, you are always in the wrong place." I tried to explain that I was only walking, but he didn't listen. The people in the street laughed as he pulled me toward the police station. My heart was full of shame. I thought of Cosette. If she saw me now, she would not know her mother. Inside the police station, the officer who sat behind the desk was tall with cold, sharp eyes. His name was Inspector Ya. Everyone in the town knew him. He believed in the law more than in people. For him, every poor person was a liar and a criminal. He looked at me as if I was dirt. "What has she done?" he asked the policeman. "Nothing much," the officer replied. "She was shouting in the street." "5 years in prison," said Ya coldly. "Please, sir," I cried. "I did nothing wrong. I am just a poor woman. I have a little daughter. She is sick and needs me." Shah looked at me without a sign of pity. "The law is the law," he said. "You broke it." At that moment, another man entered the room. He wore simple clothes but looked important. His eyes were calm and kind. The policeman stood up quickly when they saw him. "Mr. Lamour," said Ya, bowing. It was the mayor of Montreuil, Sir Mayor, Mshour Melin. He looked at me with surprise. "What has she done?" he asked gently. "She insulted a man in the street," Ya said. I tried to speak. He threw snow in my face. I begged him to stop. He laughed at me. Melin turned to Ya and, "For that, you want to send her to prison for 5 years. The law is the law, Mr. Lamour." Ya repeated. "She is a bad woman." Melin looked at me again. "What is your name?" I whispered. "Nancy." Then he said softly, "Release her." Ya's face turned red. But sir, I said, release her. Melanie said firmly. She has suffered enough. The policeman let go of my arm. I fell to my knees and began to cry. Thank you, sir, I whispered. You saved me. Melanie helped me stand. Go home and rest, he said. I tried to walk, but my body was weak. I coughed again and again. My lungs hurt. I could not stop shaking. I left the station and walked back to my small room holding my chest. That night, I was more ill than ever before. The next day, I was lying in bed, too weak to move. Someone knocked on the door. I thought it was the landlord asking for rent again. I said, please. Not today. But when the door opened, it was not him. It was Mr. Melling. He came in quietly and sat beside my bed. I was too tired to speak. He looked around the room and saw my few things. An old blanket, a broken chair, and some papers. From more, he picked up one letter and read it. His face grew serious. The tin Rardas, he asked. They are the people who take care of your daughter. I nodded weakly. Yes, sir, I send them money. They say she is sick, so I must send more. He sighed deeply. They are not honest people. I started crying. Please, sir, I just want my little girl. I want to see her again before I die. He looked at me kindly. You will see her, he said. I promise you that. I stared at him, not sure if I heard right. You will bring her to me. He smiled softly. Yes, I will go to Mont for May and bring your daughter back. Tears filled my eyes. I reached for his hand. God bless you, sir, I whispered. You are an angel, but my body was too weak to show joy. I coughed again, this time with blood on my hand. He looked worried. You need a doctor, he said. No, I whispered. I only need to see my child. He stood up and called for help. Soon, a nurse came and cleaned the room. She brought food and water. For the first time in months, I felt cared for. Days passed and I grew sicker. Every time the door opened, I hoped to see Cosette, but she did not come. One night I had a dream. I saw her running toward me, wearing a white dress, laughing under the trees. I called her name, Coette, but she ran away into the light. When I woke, my heart ached with both pain and hope. While I was lying sick, a strange thing happened in the town. A man was arrested in another village. The police said he was a thief, a dangerous criminal named Jean Valjean, who had escaped from prison. Years ago, Inspector Yaw was sure that man was the same person as Mr. Melling, our mayor. He went to the mayor's office and said, I know who you are. You are Jean Valjean, but Yaw was wrong about many things. He believed only in punishment, not in change. The mayor in truth was Jean Valjean, but he was not a criminal anymore. He had changed his life and become a good man. He had helped many poor people, given jobs to hundreds, and saved lives. Still, he was haunted by his past. After Yaw's words, Valjean knew he could not hide anymore. He left town quietly, but before leaving, he went to see me one last time. I was lying in bed, breathing slowly. When I opened my eyes, I saw him. Set, I whispered, thinking he had brought her. Not yet, he said gently. But I will find her. I give you my word. I smiled weakly. You are very kind. Tell her I love her. I will, he said. I wanted to say more, but my voice was gone. He held my hand until I fell asleep. The next morning, the nurse found me cold and still. My face looked peaceful. The suffering was over. Later that day, Jean Valjean stood by my bed for a long time. He looked at me and said quietly, I promise, Nacy, I will take care of your little girl. Then he covered my face with a cloth and left the room, tears in his eyes. Outside, the snow was falling again, just as it had the night I lost everything, but this time there was something different. The world had taken Nacy, but her love would live on through her child and through the man who had seen her pain. Jean Valjean kept his promise. He went a merm to find Cosette to give her the life her mother had dreamed of. The story of Nacy's suffering was not the end. It was the beginning of a new life for her daughter. The road to Monter was long and cold. Jean Valjean walked quietly through the snow, thinking about the woman he had promised to help. He saw her pale face in his mind, her weak voice whispering, "Tell her I love her." He carried that promise like a fire in his heart. The wind was strong, but he did not stop. Each step brought him closer to the child who waited in sadness. The child who did not know that help was on the way. When he reached the village, the night was dark. He asked people, "Where can I find the Tinard?" A man pointed to a small inn near the woods. The light from its windows was weak, but voices could be heard inside. Jean Valjean walked closer and stopped. When he heard a small noise from the forest, it was the sound of someone crying. He followed the sound and saw a tiny figure near a frozen well. The child was trying to lift a heavy bucket of water with her thin hands. Her clothes were torn and her feet were bare in the snow. The bucket fell, splashing water on her dress. She began to cry softly. Jean Valjean's heart broke at the sight. He stepped closer and said, "Little one, what are you doing here?" She looked up with frightened eyes. "I'm fetching water, monsieur," she said in a small voice. "It's too heavy for you," he said kindly. He lifted the bucket with one hand. "What is your name?" "My name is Cosette," she said. The name hit his heart like a bell. "Cosette," he whispered. "Your mother's name was Nacy." She looked at him confused. "You know my mama?" "Yes," he said softly. "I knew her. She loved you more than anything." Cosette looked down and said, "Madame Thénardier says my mama doesn't care about me anymore." Jean Valjean felt anger rise in his chest. "That is not true," he said. "Your mother loved you with all her heart." He carried the bucket to the inn and walked inside with Cosette. The room was full of noise, people drinking, laughing, and shouting. Madame Thénardier saw them and frowned. "What are you doing with that child?" she asked sharply. "She was outside in the cold, Jean." Valjean said calmly, "Fetching water while everyone else is warm." Madame Thénardier laughed. "That's what she's here for. She must earn her stay." Her mother left her long ago. Jean Valjean looked around. Thénardier's two daughters were wearing fine dresses and sitting by the fire. Cosette stood behind him, shaking from fear. He put his hand on her shoulder to comfort her. "She doesn't look well cared for," he said. "I believe her mother sent money for her, didn't she?" Madame Thénardier smiled falsely. Yes, but it wasn't much. Children are expensive, monsieur." "She eats a lot." Cosette lowered her eyes. She knew she ate almost nothing. Jean Valjean took out his wallet and placed a gold coin on the table. "Here," he said quietly. "This should help." Madame Thénardier's eyes widened. "Oh, Monsieur, you are very kind. Have a seat. Perhaps you want dinner, some wine." "No, thank you," said Valjean, "but I would like to buy something for this little girl. Does she have a doll?" Madame Thénardier laughed again. "A doll, she? Of course not, dolls are for my girls. She's just a servant." Jean Valjean looked around and saw a beautiful doll on a chair, a doll with bright eyes and a pink dress. He walked to it, picked it up, and handed it to Cosette. "Here, my dear. This is for you." Cosette froze. She looked at the doll as if it were magic. She had never touched one before. Her lips trembled and her eyes filled with tears. "For me," she whispered. "Yes," he said gently, "for you." She held the doll tightly, afraid someone would take it away. Madame Thénardier forced a smile, pretending to be pleased, but her eyes showed anger. "Oh, she doesn't need such things," she said quickly. Jean Valjean looked at her calmly. "I think she does." Later that night, when everyone else went asleep, Cosette sat in a corner with her doll in her lap. Jean Valjean watched her quietly. She looked small and fragile, but there was a light in her eyes, the same light Nacy once had. The next morning, he spoke to Madame Thénardier again. "I would like to take the child with me." He said, "Her mother has passed away. She belongs with me now." Madame Thénardier looked surprised. "Take her." "Oh no, monsieur, she helps me. She can't go." He placed more gold coins on the table. This is for your trouble. Her husband, Monsieur Thénardier, came running when he saw the money. Of course, monsieur, he said quickly. If you can give us just a little more, she's yours. Jean Valjean took out his purse again and placed several more coins on the table. Now she's free, he said. They nodded eagerly, their faces full of greed. Cosette watched, not fully understanding what was happening. Jean Valjean turned to her and smiled. Come, my dear, it's time to go. Cosette stood still for a moment. Madame will be angry, she whispered. She won't hurt you again, he said softly. You're safe now. He took her hand, and they walked out of the inn together. The morning air was cold but bright. Cosette looked up at the sky, holding her doll close. For the first time in her life, she felt warm. As they walked away from the village, Jean Valjean told her stories to make her smile. He talked about cities, flowers, and sunshine. Cosette listened quietly, holding his hand tightly. She still did not know who he really was, but she felt safe beside him. That night, they reached another town and stayed at a small inn. Cosette fell asleep quickly, her doll beside her. Jean Valjean sat by the window watching the stars. He thought about Nacy and whispered, She's safe now. Nacy, I kept my promise. From that day on, Jean Valjean became both father and mother to Cosette. He worked hard and stayed hidden from the police who were still searching for him. Inspector Ya had learned that the mayor of Montreux had disappeared, and he guessed that Valjean had escaped again. But Jean Valjean cared only about one thing now, protecting Cosette. Years passed, and Cosette grew into a young woman. She studied, learned to read, and smiled often. The sadness that once filled her eyes slowly disappeared. She never forgot her mother, but she learned that love can take many forms. Jean Valjean never told her everything about his past, but she knew he was a good man. Sometimes she asked, Was my mother beautiful? Jean Valjean smiled softly. Yes, he said, very beautiful. She loved you more than anyone in this world. Cosette would hold his hand and say, Thank you for bringing me home. Whenever she said those words, he felt peace in his heart. One spring morning, they visited a small garden filled with flowers. The air was sweet and warm. Cosette sat under a tree reading. Jean Valjean looked at her and thought of Nacy in his mind. He saw her smiling, the same smile that now lived on her daughter's face. He knew that life had been cruel, but he also knew that love had won in the end. Nacy's life was full of pain, but her love had created light. That light now shone in Cosette. Jean Valjean whispered to himself, She is safe, Nacy. Your little girl is happy. And for the first time in many years, he smiled without sadness. The story of Nacy and her little girl was not just about sorrow. It was about love that never dies, even after the body is gone. It was about a mother's sacrifice and a man's promise, both stronger than fear, hunger, or death. As the sun set that evening, Cosette closed her book and said, Father, look at the sky. Isn't it beautiful? Jean Valjean looked up and saw the golden light on the clouds. Yes, he said softly, it's beautiful. Just like your mother's heart. Cosette smiled, not fully understanding. But she felt something warm inside her, a love that had started long before she could remember, a love that had saved her. And somewhere beyond the clouds, perhaps, Nacy was watching, her heart finally at peace. Seeing her little girl safe, loved, and